Hello all, welcome back to Dual Dwarves. I hope you all have been doing okay. It's been a minute since I've checked back in. Well, let's begin. I was excited to have the fortress back in my hand. I checked in on what Masrus had gotten up to since I'd last had the fortress. It would appear there are many more dwarves, some farm plots, some waterworks, and what appears to be the beginnings of a new tavern, Klingspot, the Drinker. Now, me and Masrus stopped by the mountain homes, and some of you dwarves had some suggestions. Well, about my drink problem, like setting areas to gather fruits from, or forbidding certain plants from being turned into meals. So I went ahead and set it so that all my plum helmets were stored in a specific area, and that area was linked to a specific still. I'm not sure if this was exactly what you guys meant, but I think it will do for now. I also set up a few more breweries, and along with that, I set specific dwarfs to work in each of them. However, I did not immediately see our drinks go up, so I just made it so that anybody could access these breweries and create some drinks, and well, that ended up working out a lot better. We've also had some petitions for temples to be made. The first was a temple for the Sect of Zeal. A lot of dwarves here follow the teachings of Uzo Helped Honored. Uzo Helped Honored was a deity that occurs in the myth of the Wild Realm. Uzo was most often depicted as a female that was associated with revelry, happiness, youth, and longevity. A fine goddess indeed. Happy to build a shrine to her here in my fortress. Yes. So I set aside an area to construct said temple while I tried to reach the cavern layer. The reason being is I desperately needed to drain some water that began overflowing in our aquifer. It would appear that Lacotte, our orphan, is throwing a tantrum. He's attacking a tur. Well, it seems he's been having a lot of these tantrums recently, but this is the first he's attacked someone. If he doesn't get in line soon, we're gonna have to do something about it. Eventually, we hit the cavern, and I set up a gate to drain the water into. A dwarf claims a workshop and begins working furiously. He produces Irguvath, a golden grate that menaces with spikes. Very neat. It really speaks to the fact that my dwarves are probably fed up with the flooding, so this will go into the shrine I'm creating. We see in the Sect of Zeal temple there is a goblin that's just been chilling, which I find quite strange because, let me back up. There were a few visitors who were just hanging around the fort. I wasn't really sure what to do with them, since they mostly just hang around drinking our beer, eating our food. I didn't really mind that part. What I was more afraid of was, what happened last time, so I removed the areas from the public, and I'm going to keep doing that until I feel ready. However, there was a goblin who just did not go away. But, I'm not gonna be too mad. Just look at the little guy. I began modifying the current base's layout in an attempt to make it more secure, carving out parts of the mountain that would serve as points of access into the fort. During my renovations, many caravans made their way through. I traded for instruments with the elves. The mountain hones fulfilled my frankly wild request for every single kind of parchment in the game, which I seriously lacked the funding for. Another dwarf was struck with a strange mood, but I didn't have the right materials for him. Suspect I didn't have enough of the specific kind of cloth, probably silk he was looking for. He spent so long screaming for those materials, he went berserk. He was struck down by a member of his own militia. I figured now would be a good time to mention all the artifacts that have been created in the fort. I'll start with our most recent one, Gassis Thothbot Estil Lamal. This is a catbone buckler. All craft dwarf ship is of the highest quality. It is decorated with catbone and encircled with bounds of round Kalenanite cabochons. This object menaces with spikes of sandstone. I find this artifact pretty neat because it was created for two reasons. The first being I started butchering cats for food, and leather, and fat for soap, as well as Logim, our militia commander, has set orders for things to be decorated with bone. So I think this is kind of the combination of those two elements in this artifact here. Up next we have Irguvov. It is a gold grade. All craftsdwarf ship is of the highest quality. It is encrusted with round siltstone cabochons and studded with gold. This object menaces with spikes of siltstone. It is coated with silt loam as of current. And then we have, now this is a really good one, Kobim Mihmush. This is a siltstone bed. All craftsdwarf ship is of the highest quality. It is encrusted with round wombat leather. On the item is an image of Stastot, ear scorpion, the goblin, and Safelu, the giant wolf in siltstone. Safelu is striking down Stastot, ear scorpion. The artwork relates to the killing of the goblin Stastot, ear scorpion by the giant wolf in the Jungle of Rites in 91. On the item is an image of Ustuth Uttertrade, the dwarf, in calm teacher stand, the human in goat leather. Ustuth Uttertrade is making a plaintive gesture. Calm teacher stand is striking a menacing pose. The artwork relates to the mortal wounding of the dwarf Ustuth Uttertrade by the human calm teacher sand with a silver bolt from a bronze crossbow in Copperfather in the late autumn of 101. I mean, just a fascinating artifact. It's got a lot of dwarven history. After doing some research, I found out that the dwarf who created the artifact actually had no relations to any of the creatures that are depicted in the artifact, which means that he's only heard about these events happening through story, which I find very neat indeed. Troubled likes, knowing what you know, it must be hard to sleep at night. Now this one, kind of sad, but it's also kind of neat. This is a gypsum figurine of Dedukwe-Levi. All craftsmanship is of the highest quality. The item is a masterfully designed image of Dedukwe-Levi, the dwarf, in gypsum, by Delar Jijin Muthkat. Dedukwe-Levi is dead. The artwork relates to the dehydration of the dwarf Dedukwe-Levi in Copperfather in the midwinter of 100. It is encrusted with rectangular selenite cabochons and round, brilliant cut rock. Now, let's take a look here for a few seconds. Okay, so I just checked, and the creator of this is a dwarven child, and they actually have no relations to Dedukwe-Levi. Very interesting. Pretty neat how these dwarves learn about these things and create artifacts based off of the things that they hear. I also think that it's kind of ironic that it's made of selenite, which famously disintegrates in water. Next we have Lilim. Now this one is interesting because, well, it is a lignite mini-forge. All craft door ship is of the highest quality. The object menaces with spikes of lignite, and on the item is an image of Irguvoth, or Flush Shreds, the gold grate in copper. So it is an artifact with an image of another artifact. After some deducing, we discovered that it is actually an incense burner. Lignite is a fossil fuel, and so they just burn it. They just set it on fire, and it smells like coal, and well, I guess the dwarves are a fan of that. We have, next, Selen Thothsal Sharsid Kudar. This is a sparrowbone amulet. All craft store ship is of the highest quality. It is encircled with bands of toadbone. This object menaces with spikes of sparrowbone and chicken leather. Very neat bone-centric amulet. And last but not least, we have, well, Nelbows by our Fisher Dwarf kid, which, interestingly enough, is now dating Etur. It's nice to see some romance happening in the fort. Love, however, is not powerful enough to stop a vile force of darkness from arriving at our fort, probably set to steal our dwarven artifacts. It is no worry, as I send Logan's militia to meet them. Logan's militia bests any goblin that dare approach. I also threw together a ragtag group to defend the dwarves inside, just in case any goblins made it. As, well, my fortress is fortifications were not ready. I still had a few ramps to dismantle, and some goblins did in fact go up those ramps that I did not yet dismantle, so our recruits were tested, and guess what? They were bested, yes. Those recruits were defeated by the goblins that entered our fort. Some recruit and civilian casualties, quite unfortunate. After I dealt what was happening inside, I set Logan's militia to meet those goblins in there, and they made swift work of them. Yes, after I did that, I sent the remaining recruits and all of the militia to meet the goblins where they were standing. The recruits got there first and were, well, yet again bested. Logan's militia soon followed up and cleaned house on the remaining goblins, beak dogs, and maneras. It was a victory for Copperfather. Oh, would you look at that? The year is 106. Well, that means it's time for a Etur's vacation. Yep, him and Logan have came to an agreement to switch every couple of years or so. While I'm transferring the fort, I think it best to go over some of the things that I'd accomplished during my time. I have finished making Klingspot. with a library just underneath it. I had finished making 2 temples, with a third on the way. The first being dedicated to Uzo, and the other 2 being dedicated to Ugoth. I have adorned the temple with all the artifacts we had made. I have finished the creation of a guild hall for our farmers, and I've agreed to create a guild hall for all of our craft dwarves. One of my last projects I would like to mention is the creating of a moat around the fort. And I think that just about does it for all that I have done here at the fort. It's kind of a shame, as there are a few projects I would like to have finished up, but we'll see what Moose Roos gets up to. Now that we are getting to the end of the episode, I thought I'd bitch in a little tidbit. I actually had to redo a lot of the work that I did because my game crashed right when the Vile Force of Darkness arrived. In the last save, Reg, our most prolific dwarf miner, drowned, and I was trying to make the mister for the temple. The whole temple got flooded, but yeah, water has kind of been like the bane of my existence in Dwarf Fortress for a lot of the time I've been playing it. Before, I tried to avoid aquifers entirely. I did not like them. I would kind of look for a Goldilocks area where there's a brook and there is no aquifer, so I can still get water if my dwarves ever get super thirsty. And yeah, that's what I'd just done for some time. But, you know, working on this fort has made me a lot better at working with aquifers, and I do see they're pretty useful. They're not entirely horrible. Also, I lost a lot of the footage that I'd recorded, so I kind of tried to compensate with a little bit more art. By the way, tell me what y'all think of the art. I had a lot of fun creating it. But we'll just have to see what Moose Roos gets up to on the next episode of Duel Dwarves!